Okay, let's unpack this. If you've ever had a brilliant idea, a new business, a software feature, even a YouTube channel,
Right.
you probably spent weeks, maybe even months, just polishing the plan, getting every single detail perfect for this big launch.
And then,
Crickets. Exactly. The market just shrugs. And that painful truth is what Eric Ries lays bare in The Lean Startup. Starting with that perfect plan often means you're just running into a wall at full speed.
that's really the core tension we're diving into today. This is a systematic guide for innovation that's built really entirely around dealing with uncertainty.
Yeah.
The old business model, it rewards planning and execution. The lean startup model, though, it rewards rapid, verified learning. And for you listening, whether you're leading a team or even just thinking about a career change, this whole system is kind of a shortcut.
A shortcut how?
It lets you replace those long business plans, all that blind optimism, with data. Real, actionable data.
So our mission today is to really pull out the core philosophy, the engine that drives it. That's the build, measure, learn feedback loop. And the key tools like the MVP and validated learning.
We're looking for the operating manual for innovation itself.
Exactly.
And if you could boil this entire framework down to just one powerful principle, it's this. Success is not about having the best idea. It's not about the most funding.
Okay.
It is fundamentally about learning the fastest.
Yeah.
That's the foundation of the entire system.
And that's where things get interesting because that commitment to learning, it forces a really uncomfortable mindset shift.
It really does.
Ries points out that most startups don't fail because they lack hardworking people. People are absolutely burning the midnight oil.
Yeah, for sure.
They fail because those dedicated teams were perfectly executing a plan to build something nobody actually wanted.
It's the difference between being efficient and being effective, right? You can be incredibly efficient at building the wrong product.
Which is a painful realization.
A very painful realization. Because if you execute perfectly, but your basic assumptions about the customer are just wrong, you still fail. You just fail on time and on budget.
So this completely flips conventional wisdom. If the problem isn't the execution, but the idea itself, what's the new question we should be asking every day?
Well, you have to move completely away from that traditional management question, which is always, how do we execute this 20-page plan?
On time and under budget.
Right. That question implies a certainty that just isn't there.
And so we replace it with the only question that actually matters in this lean environment.
Which is?
What should we learn next?
That shift is seismic. It's huge because it reframes everything. Product development stops being this, construction project.
Just executing a blueprint.
Exactly. It becomes a process of scientific discovery. When your main goal is learning, then every action you take, every dollar you spend, is all designed to test one assumption. You're trading blind faith for a series of small, rapid experiments.
Okay, so if the mindset is about learning, what's the actual engine that drives it?
That brings us to the core of the methodology.
The build, measure, learn feedback loop. Let's break down how this cycle actually works.
So it starts with build. And the key thing here versus traditional R&D is it's all about velocity over fidelity.
Speed over perfection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You create a basic, functional version of your idea, just enough to start learning. Ries is very clear about this. It cannot be a polished product. It has to be the roughest thing that gets you data.
I think this is where most people get tripped up, though. The instinct, especially if you're a creator, is to polish, to hide it until it's perfect.
Of course, but the lean philosophy argues that every moment you spend polishing something before you've tested it is a moment you're potentially wasting on something customers just don't care about.
Right. All that time, all those resources, that emotional energy, it's all based on an untested guess.
And that is the definition of waste that Ries says we have to avoid. The build phase is just a step to get you to the measure phase.
Which is part 2. Measure. This is where you collect real data from real users. And Ries is so adamant here, we're not looking for opinions. We're hunting for observable behavior.
Yes. You don't ask people, hey, would you use this?
You release it and you watch if they actually use it.
And that data has to be actionable, which we'll get into when we talk about vanity metrics. But once you have that data, that validation, or, invalidation, you get to the most important part.
Learn.
The learn phase. This is the decision point. Based on those hard numbers, you have to choose one of two paths.
Pivot, which means you change direction, or persevere, where you keep going because the data backs you up.
And to tie this all together, the goal of this whole loop, ironically, is not to build a final product.
What is it then?
The true goal is to maximize your learning per unit of time you invest. Building is just the way you get that knowledge.
Speaking of how you build, that brings us to what is, I mean, easily the book's most famous and probably most misunderstood concept,
The MVP?
the minimum viable product.
Yeah, that term gets thrown around everywhere now, and usually incorrectly. People use it to describe a nearly finished product that's just missing a few features.
But that's not what Ries means, is it?
Not at all. He defines it way more strictly. It is the simplest possible version of a product that lets you get validated learning with the absolute least amount of effort. It exists only to test your single riskiest assumption.
That is so counterintuitive, especially if you take pride in quality work. I mean, what does least effort even look like? Isn't the risk that you launch something ugly and you just turn off your first customers for good?
That's a great question, and it's the fear that kills this process in big companies. But Rees points out the MVP isn't for a big public launch. It's for your early adopters, the people who are eager to test a prototype.
Mm-hmm.
And often the MVP isn't even code.
Okay, give us an example of that. How can it be so minimal and still test a huge business assumption?
Think about Zappos, the shoe company. Their first MVP wasn't some complex website with a massive inventory system.
Right.
The founder had to test one single huge assumption. Will people buy shoes online? So he walked into local shoe stores, took photos of their shoes, and posted them on a super simple website.
And if someone ordered?
He would physically go back to the store, buy the shoes at full retail price, and ship them himself.
So zero inventory, zero logistics, just pictures and a PayPal button. The entire MVP was just a manual process to prove demand.
Exactly. Or look at Dropbox. Their initial big idea syncing files across computers was basically impossible to demonstrate without building this massive infrastructure.
So what did they launch?
A video. Just a high-quality 3-minute video that showed the product working as if it were real. They used that video to see if people wanted the concept and got thousands of email signups before they wrote most of the code.
Those examples really highlight the uncomfortable part of a good MVP. Ries says it explicitly. MVPs feel uncomfortable, they're often ugly, and they directly challenge your ego because you have to show your idea before it's ready.
They force you to be vulnerable. And that vulnerability is the powerful lesson. The book has that perfect quote for it.
If you're not embarrassed by your first version, you launch too late.
That's the one.
That quote is the ultimate aha moment. Because if you launch a polished, beautiful product, you have likely just wasted years of effort on features nobody wanted, all based on guesses you never tested.
And that time you save, that's real progress. But once you launch that uncomfortable MVP, how do you measure that progress? This brings us to the next big trap.
Vanity metrics.
The allure of vanity metrics.
The numbers that look great in a report but have, zero correlation with the health of the business. The book lists some classic ones to avoid, right?
Yeah.
Total downloads, page views.
Social media likes. They're dangerous because they're easy to manipulate, and they give you this illusion of success. It just fuels your confirmation bias.
So you think you're succeeding, but you're not.
Exactly. You start spending money scaling a broken model. Ries calls it success theater, looking busy and successful without creating any real value.
So if we're throwing out the numbers that make us feel good, what's the alternative?
We measure validated learning. Progress is learning. It's learning if your efforts are actually improving customer behavior.
You need to establish a cause and effect.
Precisely. You test a change, you see a measurable result, and you can draw a line between your action and that outcome.
So what are the correct metrics then? The ones that actually show that learning?
You need actionable metrics, things that track user behavior. So you're focusing on stuff like retention rates, are people coming back, conversion funnels, are they moving from prospect to customer, and crucially, repeat usage.
And you have to be able to segment that data.
Yes. You have to see if the changes you made improved things for a specific group. 1 million page views is meaningless. A 20% improvement in customer retention after you change one thing. That is validated learning.
Okay, so once we have that learning, good or bad, we're back at that final learn phase, and we face the big strategic question: pivot or persevere?
Let's clarify what a pivot is. It sounds like failure, like throwing in the towel.
But it's not. Ries defines a pivot as a structured course correction. It's designed to test a new fundamental hypothesis about your product or your strategy.
The build, measure, learn loop is working exactly as it should. It's not just random floundering. It's a change that the data is forcing you to make.
So it's not just abandon ship. There are different kinds of pivots, right?
Absolutely. A zoom-in pivot, for example, is when one feature of your product becomes the entire new product.
Right.
A zoom-out is the opposite. Your whole product becomes just one feature of a much bigger thing.
Or a customer segment pivot.
Right, where the product stays the same, but you realize the people who actually want it are a totally different group than you first thought.
The key insight here seems to be about timing. A lot of startups die not because they pivot too early, but because they pivot way too late.
The ego and sunk costs are the enemy. You've spent months building, pitching, tying your identity to an idea. Sticking with that idea, even with bad data, it just feels safer than admitting you were wrong.
But continuing on a bad path is way more dangerous.
Far more wasteful. The courage to change, based on data, that's what makes a lean entrepreneur.
What's so fascinating is how far these ideas reach beyond just, a tech startup in Silicon Valley.
Exactly. The book makes it clear these principles apply everywhere. Large companies trying to innovate, marketing strategies, even managing your own career.
Think about that for a second, especially if you're a creator or you're building a personal brand. The process is identical.
It's the same loop.
Your content idea is your build. You have to test that content, measure the response, learn from it, and improve fast. Stop guessing what the audience wants and start treating your first video or your first article like a true MVP.
It's the ultimate discipline for maximizing your time. It's the antidote to spending years building something in isolation, only to find out nobody's there waiting for it.
So as we kind of wrap this all up, the final verdict from the lean startup is just so clear. Failure isn't the real enemy.
Not at all.
The real enemy is wasted effort. It's that massive resource drain from scaling a bad idea too fast. This whole methodology is a system to avoid those huge mistakes.
It is. I will say, though, that while the approach is incredibly practical, it does require immense discipline to do it right.
It's not a magic formula.
No, it demands a rigorous, almost scientific commitment to the data and the guts to make that painful pivot when the numbers tell you to. It demands radical honesty with yourself.
That radical honesty is the key. So we'll leave you with a final thought, building on that core takeaway. Don't guess what people want. Test it. Measure it. Learn fast.
Right.
So look at your own project right now, the one you are most attached to, and find its single biggest untested assumption. And then ask yourself, what is the absolute ugliest, simplest, most uncomfortable, minimum viable product you could launch right now, today, to test that one assumption? Go build that instead.